And I'm going to move on to DVDs now. I've got a lot of these to cover because I bought a lot since the milestone 20th episode. And I got this at half price books for under $4, I think. It was like $3 or $4. Cut. It was really cheap. And it's Rodin. If you're a Toho monster movie fan, a Godzilla fan, check this out. It's got Rodin in it. It's a movie that features Rodin and him doing much of what happens in all the other Toho movies. Giant monsters run around, battle, and blow shit up. It's great fun for everyone. Again, classic. Check it out. And another Gamera movie. I also got this at half price books. Really cheap, under $4 again, I think. It's another one of the earlier Gamera films where he fights Barugan, and haven't really had a chance to watch this yet. But it's a Gamera film; it can't be bad. Again, much like the other giant monster movies, giant monsters battle, blow crap up. It's great fun. And next, I'm going to talk about House of the Wolfman. In the old Universal days, towards the end, they had a couple of movies, House of Dracula and House of Frankenstein, which featured, it was essentially a monster mash movie. You had all of these monsters getting together in one film, duking it out or conspiring against each other. And the one they never made before the end of the Universal Monster heyday was House of the Wolfman. And that's essentially what this film is trying to do. It's trying to relive the old glory days of the Universal films, which I think they did a pretty good job of capturing. This movie wasn't horrible, but it was really slow. The action doesn't really kick in until the very end. The special makeup effects are awesome. And those people that are like, ooh, Dracula's in this film too, he's at the very end, and he has a very tiny part. I was very disappointed by that. In fact, I'm going to say this film is a lot like Frankenstein meets the Wolfman in terms of the way it plays out and the action that happens. But with more updated makeup. Great battle scene at the end. Again, great makeup, but it's a lot like Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. I'm going to say it's a cool new addition to the Universal type monster library. If you're a diehard Universal monster fan, you'll probably really enjoy this. Those who are into more hardcore horror, I'm going to say you're probably not going to enjoy this as much. I thought it was just okay, but if you're into that kind of stuff, I'd recommend checking it out. This will probably be one of many times that I mention Paul Naschy again. The same company that released The Night That Evelyn Came Out of the Grave, the uncut version that I have, Cinema Diaboli, they also released this cut of Dracula's Great Love. I'm going to say this is one of the coolest Paul Naschy films I've ever seen. He's great as Dracula, because of course we all know Naschy plays the monster, no surprise there. It's what you would expect out of a vampire movie, especially one from Paul Naschy. It's got violence, it's got vampire vixens, it's got everything you could want in a vampire movie. Again, this one's kind of slow at the beginning, but once it starts to get to the halfway point, I mean, the very beginning's really cool, and then it kind of slows down for a while, and then it picks up again. I like this movie because it took the whole Dracula vampire concept and it ran with it. It went in a different direction, and that's why I like Paul Naschy's movies so much. They took the originals, went their own way with them, and that's what makes them so cool. And they weren't afraid to, add blood or sexuality to them because they were European films. Speaking of European horror and classic monsters, this is Frankenstein's Revenge, or Revenge of Frankenstein, sorry. Peter Cushing, of course, plays Frankenstein with creating a different Frankenstein monster. I believe this one's supposed to be a direct sequel to Curse of Frankenstein. Really haven't had a chance to watch it all the way through yet. Frankenstein monster, if you're expecting, the iconic Frankenstein, you're going to be disappointed. But that's not why the Hammer Frankenstein movies are cool. You watch the Hammer Frankenstein movies for Peter Cushing and his performances because he was a legendary actor, and he will always be looked upon as one of the great classic horror actors, in my opinion. Of course, we have Christopher Lee, the quintessential Hammer British Dracula. In my opinion, the second best Dracula next to Bela Lugosi. And this is Dracula Prince of Darkness, an old Anchor Bay release. Great movie. It's a direct sequel, I believe, to Horror Frankenstein. I'm gonna say it's not as good as Horror Frankenstein and not as good as some of the other ones, but it's definitely a worthy addition to the 7 Christopher Lee Dracula movies. If you're a completist freak like me, definitely have to pick it up. And I also got this for my birthday, finally. Scars of Dracula. This is out of print now. I had my wife had to pay a pretty penny to buy this used on Amazon, but it's well worth it in my opinion. This is, I'm gonna go out and say, my favorite Christopher Lee Dracula movie, just because of the bats and the gore and just the way the story plays out. It's Dracula. It's Christopher Lee's Dracula and it's most sadistic in my opinion. That's why I really dig this movie. Definitely worth checking out. A great movie if you can find it. Hopefully you'll be able to find it for slightly less than I did, but a great movie even though it's out of print and hard to find now. More Hammer horror films. We have Countess Dracula and Vampire Lovers. I had actually seen Vampire Lovers before I got this DVD for my birthday on Netflix, and it was a pretty cool vampire chick flick. And by that I mean vampire vixen film. It's not a chick flick by any stretch, but it's a great female vampire movie. Countess Dracula. It's kind of a play on Elizabeth Bathory. I don't believe the Countess is called Bathory at all in the movie. Ingrid Pitt's great as Countess Dracula, and they really don't bring the whole Countess Dracula thing until the very end, as far as, calling her Countess Dracula. Great movie if you're familiar with the Bathory legend at all. Worth checking out if you're a big fan of Hammer horror films. You haven't seen these films yet. More vampires. This is Dracula's Curse, a little indie low budget film. Yeah, it's very low budget. It's got a lot of heart, though, for being such a low budget film. The special features have a really very exclusive spoiler, so watch the movie first before watching the special features. Don't make the same mistake I did if you buy this. I got this really cheap at Fry's. It was like under $5 at Fry's, I think. In fact, I think it was $4.99, so it was $5. Storyline's pretty cool. A bunch of team of badasses fighting vampires, which this again kind of brings the whole Countess Bathory idea into the story, and it's great fun. The special effects at the end are really cool. That's like the whole point of even thinking about buying this movie, in my opinion. But the story isn't as bad as people panned it online, in my opinion. It was decent for $5. I was supposed to get the double pack of both this movie and its sequel for my birthday, but apparently it's getting hard to find. I happened to find this copy of the first Count Yorga movie at Barnes & Noble, and it was $5. It was okay. I think the second one's probably going to be better if I can ever find a copy of it. But this one wasn't bad for a vampire movie that was not a direct Dracula movie. Cut. But Robert Quarry's great. He was in the Dr. Phibes movies with Vincent Price, and this is a great movie to check out if you love vampires. Yet more vampires. I mentioned this movie once in a previous movie morgue, I think, but I didn't have it yet. Finally went on sale around Halloween. I think it was $6 or $7. Great movie. In my opinion, I like to call this the Dawn of the Dead of vampire films, because that's what it is. It's like vampires are pretty much taken over. Humans are in short supply, and weird things are happening. And I really like the way they took the whole vampire society with it. And this movie is also a very interesting commentary on corporate America. If you have to dig a little bit to kind of get that, but it really is, and I think that's another part of why this movie is so good, is the kind of the social commentary that goes on, and not an overt in your face kind of way, but an underlying, hey, that's probably how corporate America would act under those circumstances.